Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we contemplate this question of whether water, which we drink every day, we take our baths and showers in it, we sail across it in the lakes and the oceans, is water conscious? And what are the magical properties and mysterious qualities of water, a commodity that we take for granted in our world, but is actually the basis of life itself. Before we dive into that program, I just want to take a moment to thank everybody once again for the way you've all contributed to our support over the last week with our fundraising campaign that started on Monday. Each day, it's been a thrill to see the various contributions come in. Some people have shared contributions. Other people have done other creative things with it. And I just want to tell you, as we celebrated our 900th day of Humanity Rising this week, just how meaningful it is to be in your company and day by day and week by week and year by year bring to you the kind of information that is necessary for humanity to rise. And today we want to celebrate water. I can still remember listening to a video of Nassim Haramein, the great physicist, who you all know. He was making the comment during his lecture that if he had to identify the brain in the body, it wouldn't be the brain. It would be water. And I was astonished to hear this eminent physicist make such a statement. And then he went on to explain why that is so. And you've probably all heard about studies or listened to videos and YouTubes on the mysteries of water. But that's what we want to delve into today, knowing that Earth Day is right around the corner next Monday. And on Monday, by the way, we're going to be having Linda Tucker of the White Lion Protection Trust in Timbavati in South Africa celebrate Earth Day with a presentation on humanity rising in the age of Leo and Aquarius. And today we're going to begin our celebrations of Earth Day by just simply reverencing water. In order to do that, I want to welcome Hope Fitzgerald. You'll remember that Hope was on Humanity Rising some months ago with Gary Malkin. And I was so intrigued by what she was saying about infinity waves and her extraordinary experience with water that I immediately contacted her and we set this date. And so here she is. Hope has got a very, very special program for us for today. So Hope, I'm going to just turn the program right over to you with many thanks for all you're doing to bring to our collective attention the miracle of water.
Oh, thank you, Jim. This is truly one of the pinnacle excitement days of my life, because being able to share this mystery of water with the general audience is can be life-changing, can really switch up our understandings of something that is all around us every day, and we completely take it for granted. So first of all, I want to say I'm so thrilled you're having Linda on your program. I have been to her White Lion Preserve twice, and she is absolutely one of the most amazing women I've ever met, and a perfect spokesperson for Earth Day. So awesome. Okay, so first of all, I want to just do a little review for those who may not have been on the show or watched the show with Gary Malkin in January. I want to just reiterate why water is so important to me. And that has to do with a a series of visions that I had in 2010 that introduced an energetic to me, and it's called the infinity wave. I'm just going to show you quick picture what you can imagine it looks like. It's a figure eight made of flowing water. Doesn't have to be upright, can be any direction. And what I was taught and ultimately taught to others is that this figure eight made of flowing water, excuse me, has energy within it. And the energy within it is a very pristine, very, very high frequency, a level of love and compassion. And when we use this idea, this metaphor, this design of the infinity wave, figure eight of flowing water, within our own bodies, within our own consciousness, as a way to communicate between one another, everything seems to get better. It definitely lifts our beings up and out of sort of a locked down position. It puts us into flow. It puts us into love and compassion without a lot of effort on our part. It's already inherent in the water. So I've been, when this first came in, of course, I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't know what the heck I was dealing with. I'm a dowser, so through the dowsing rods, I was able to understand more and more about this figure eight of flowing water that I was told I needed to teach about. And that sent me into a study on water itself. Why is this thing being presented to me as watery? It could have been anything. It could have been gaseous. It could have been, but it wasn't. It was water, and there was a specific reason for that. Along the way, I mentioned all this discovery to my dear friend Patrick Durkin, and he eventually came and joined my workshops. And it turns out that he was on his own discovery, having to do with water, coming at it from a completely different angle, which I'll let him tell you about in a bit. But all this is to say that our concentration on water now for over 13 years, 14 years, has brought us to a point where we, Patrick and I for sure, but I'll just speak for myself now. I went through a process of falling in love with water. I love that Nassim said what he did about water being the brain. I couldn't agree more, because as I fell in love with water, water started to speak to me. And again, I wasn't used to having these kinds of things happen, but water started to inform me about its properties and the fact that it's been staring us in the face all this time. And I'm not a scientist, but I have a scientific curiosity. So I was always seeking, as just a humble person, for some kind of unifying principle. And the more I learned about water, the more I thought, oh my gosh, could it be that it's so simple, it's so obvious. Could this be at least a unifying principle? Learning that water is dropping into our atmosphere from space every single day. These ice crystals, that space is full of water. Things that we've always thought of it as only being present in our lakes and our rivers, but that's not the case. And there are multiple phases of water. So books have been written about this, etc. As I fell in love with water more, water taught me that there is a relationship between light and water, and that the sun and the information that is in the light of the sun actually interacts with water and informs the water and vice versa. So this is far out stuff, I understand. I'm going to now introduce you to a woman who has been doing water research for 10 years. Her name is Veda Austin. She's from New Zealand. I did an interview with her yesterday that I will play here in a minute, because she's upside down time-wise with us, so it made more sense to just capture her and then share it here in video form. She has taken the work of Dr. Emoto, Masaru Emoto, Japanese researcher, who put out many books on this consciousness of water and how he proved that through frozen crystals. And he proved that if you put a word on a beaker, that it would change the molecular structure of the water molecules. And so if you had tap water, just general tap water, when you froze that molecule, it might look very murky. But when you then put the word joy or peace or gratitude onto that beaker of water and froze it, it had these beautiful hexagonal snowflake designs, intricate, gorgeous. So he has a whole body of work. Veda has taken that and gone way beyond. And I encourage you to look up her work. She has lots of YouTubes. She has many podcasts on her website, vedaaustin.com, VEDAAUSTIN. And you can really dive into her research. But I had said to Jim, if we're going to talk about water, we have to talk to Veda. So I think with no further ado, I'm going to play this, and I will probably I'm going to be starting it not at the very beginning of our interview, but I will summarize now that she starts out talking about a horrendous car accident that she had, where there were deaths in the car, and there was no way that she was expected to survive. She did survive, and one of the ways was she started experimenting with alkaline water from the ground, from springs. And in New Zealand, there are many of these. She then found a particular spring, and this is some years after the accident. And in drinking that particular water, she started to have these painful little bumps on her arm and on her chin. And turns out the water was expelling shards of glass that had gone into her body during the accident. And so something was dramatically changing. She looks incredibly healthy and fit despite all the horrible things that happened to her body in the accident now. So that started her exploration. And now I will share this.
And then I started to research more and more and more about water. And I started to realize that water never used to be called water. It was called the waters, because in ancient times, people understood water to be a living being. Think about even how the words we use. It's a body of water, the mouth of the river, the headwaters. And when Romans brought plumbing into being, people started to see their waste get and take away by water. And waters, or the waters, was being reduced to water. And now we even go to H2O. But where in our English language waters still resonates, outside of biblically, is where we say her waters broke. There is a trickling down of this ancient information. So that's kind of what got me curious about water. And then I started to read more about people's work with water, like Dr. Gerald Pollack's The Fourth Phase of Water. And of course, people know about Masaru Emoto, although he wasn't embraced by the scientific community. He opened the door for people to see themselves as water bodies, sensitive to thoughts and sounds and environment. And then there's a man called Laurent Costa, and his work inspired me a lot. So he was looking down the microscope in a similar way to Emoto, but he didn't want to experiment on the water because in his opinion, the water was his spiritual teacher. And so sometimes he'd smile at the water before he flash froze it and photographed the ice crystals that formed. And he was seeing smiley faces back. He was seeing hearts. He was seeing images, pictures relative to his thoughts or things that had happened in his day. And art is a very unique thing. He also saw geometries. But for the most part, most people, when they think about beautiful water in a crystallographic form, they tend to go to the geometries they saw in Emoto's work. But Laurent's work, he wrote a book called Journey into the Heart of Water with this perfect heart on the cover that he saw in the microscope. And I would say that art is a very human thing. it is also a very sophisticated way of translating information that you feel and that you see. And that if you go back to times where the cave people were drawing pictures, expressing what they were seeing, and it's a communication, it's a language, and that water was designing in these very clear pictures fascinated me. And so I'm a water researcher, but I used to be an artist. Well, I'm still an artist. I just haven't painted in a while. So I worked professionally as an oil painter for many years. And so I see the world through a lens of art. And so that was interesting. And then there was a man called Thomas Hieronymus. And this is the person probably who inspired me to begin my work, my journey with crystallography, freezing water in a very specific way, not through a microscope was I taking photos, but I'm taking photos on my iPhone because the work is macroscopic. And so Hieronymus was a radionic engineer. He went into a Parisian meat market on a very cold day and observed that the freshly placed organs of an animal appeared to be affecting the way the frost froze on the glass behind where they were placed. For example, the frost would freeze into the shape of a liver organ above a liver organ, and so on and so forth. And his hypothesis was there seemed to be a life force energy emanating out of these organs, and he thought that was because there was water in the blood. So he thought of water as life force energy, and I often refer to it as that. And so in each organ, there is something called a sonic signature. It's like a cymatic imprint of form and function. And so he thought that the water was always communicating with itself in different stages, and I believe I've seen that too. There's no place where water isn't in communication with itself or communion with itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so he thought that the water in the blood was sharing the information of form with the water in the air, and the water in the air took that information when it hit the glass, took on the shape and form. And that was inspiring to me because he wasn't using a microscope. And so I thought, well, that's good. Maybe I'm just going to project a thought into a glass petri dish because I've been working with petri dishes for another project. I used the water that helped heal me, and I was going to project a thought into the water much like Emoto had done. Because that seemed to be the most kind of etheric, I suppose, idea. Because I wanted to just see if anything would happen. I had no idea whether or not it would. And so I had my dish and I'm like, okay, I'm going to think of something. And whilst I was thinking about what I was going to think about, there was a bit of fluff floating around in the dish. So I put my hand in, took out the fluff, and I thought, I wonder if my hand will have any impact on the water's quote unquote memory, because I didn't know if that was true. So that thought will do. And I shoved it into the freezer with the peas and broccoli and everything else. And that was when I froze water solid. Pulled it out, and a few hours later, held it up to the light and got my very first photo of now 55,000 photos of water responding in the most incredibly intelligent way. The image that I saw was of an X-ray-like hand, but not just any hand. I inherited my mother's crooked fingers on these two sides, and the fingers were crooked on those fingers of the hand. And so I was really freaked out because it looked just like a hand, and I wasn't expecting that at all. And I showed my son, and I said, what does this look like to you? And he said, it looks like a creepy X-ray hand, Mum. And I'm like, yeah, it does. And so then I went to the beach, collected some seawater, and tentatively stood outside the freezer going, oh my God, what am I going to see? If I see something, maybe this isn't random. And I got an image of a fish with gills and scales and tail and eye and everything. And then my freezer became my most used household appliance. And I saw images and images and images. And then towards the end of a year, and I know I've gone way, way deep into a very simple question that you asked me, because I'd quite like to get more into the more esoteric work that I've done, but to give a bit of an idea of how this came about. After a year, I learned more about the fourth phase of water, and that has different properties, this type of water. It absorbs more light, which really interests me. It has a negative charge. It has more of an ordered molecular structure. And so you can find this type of water in your cells, but you can also find this type of water in the stage between liquid and solid, and also in the melting stage. So I started to open my freezer earlier and earlier to see when the images were starting to form. And at about 5 minutes, 20 seconds, there was liquid on top and ice underneath. I pulled the dish out, tipped the liquid away, and photographed the crystallography that stuck to the dish. At this stage, the water has pushed the solates out, the salts and the minerals and anything that's not serving it as well, out. So it's a very thin layer of very clear, negatively charged plasmatic water. So it is like an ice, but not exactly. It's an in-between stage. It's only about 3 millimeters thick, sometimes less, which allows a lot of light to come through. But it was a quantum leap from my year of freezing water solid. I was able to see imagery that was three-dimensional, that was so clear. There was absolutely no doubting that the imagery was what I was seeing, then things that were relative to the influence or the inspiration. And now I look back at my work when I did it all those 10 years ago, when I first began, and I am amazed that I got the kind of imagery that I did now that I know this technique.
So I just want to pause here for a second, and I'm going to fast forward to some of the images that she captured, and so you can have a grasp of how specific and intelligent water is. And I just also want to highlight her message that water is always communicating with water. That is what we have found to be true as well. All right, just one second here. I'm going to fast forward this.
He invited me to do a questionnaire, and we put 20.
That is a picture of the hand that she took with her very first photo. And here is a picture
It
of
gets
the
a lot more
fish.
texture, but you can see the outline of the fish with the fins, with the eye, with the tail.
I'm going to zip along here.
What rainwater looks like, collected and frozen within an hour. This is what any water that's gone through a filter looks like. This is tap water. And tap water can vary depending on where it is and all various different factors, but often you see a lot of disorder. And then you have seawater. Now, if I can zoom in a little bit here, you might see that seawater has lots of these tiny little stars that are indented, and they all have that, and they are like little tiny star-shaped subwoofers. So you get to understand signature patterns. Then this is an example of art where I have used a picture which I've printed out, cut out, and put under my dish for 30 seconds, removed, and frozen using my method. Now, this was the result. And this is a quick example of hydroglyphs where you see you have repeated patterns. And this is from using the word marriage. But we have also come to understand that the same symbol appears using the word ring. And there have been lots of reasons why I have used marriage and ring. And a lot of my hydroglyph work has come from seeing how water responds to music and that it likes to pick up on words. Some examples of my work will be here. This is an iconic photo of my friend Wendy, and Water designed her face because I thought, well, you know, Water seems to like to design an imagery. What if I show faces? Will it show different faces? Will it show the features of different faces? So I thought a little further along with this one. I thought, what happens if I show Water the ice image of the face? So this is what I did, and this is the result. It designed a negative of the face.
Amazing. Wow.
Wonderful to show that it's not random. And then
Yeah.
I took this image, and then this is the image that I got, and there's still a face, although it's just not as clear as here, but it's starting to change. But you see that image is held. And then this is a bunch of different people's faces where I've done the same thing. This is from a lady who was pregnant, who drank some of the water and left me some. And this is the imagery that I got in the ice. You can even see a hand. She was holding her tummy whilst thinking about it. You can see this hand. And what I've noticed with embryos or anything to do with spirit is that you see this light, this different, unique kind of light showing. And this was the image that she sent me after her ultrasound the next day.
Wow.
This is to show that images stay, hold. So I find this one interesting because it didn't show the face, but it focused on the attive crown. And here's the other one, and this is the first image. Then I let this melt and then refroze it. And you can see that the imagery held, it stayed in the water. This is just various different imagery. This is an interesting one, which is it shows you an example of hydromancy. So I put my thumb in the water, obviously removed it and froze. And you can see there is a thumb in the ice with a nail, but you can also see that there is a chip in the nail. I chipped my nail in exactly the same place 3 hours later after having done this ice work. Here you can just see various different images relative to anatomy. This one is the first image I got. I let this melt and refroze it, and this is the second. You can see different colors because I did them at different times of the day. I actually like to play with the background colors, and I have to turn my dish of ice to wherever the light is best. Images of animals, of the animal kingdom. And so you can see in this one, the dog had actually smelled the water prior to freezing, and it designed his nose. There's stories behind each one, but I know we want to get into a lot of conversation, so I won't spend too much time going into all the stories. Again, this is where the ice has held the imagery. This was the first ice image, then I let it melt, and this is the refrozen one. This is where I've put physical things in the water, and I'm a little bit of focus on things that are human-made, man-made, as opposed to natural, to see how water might respond to those. And then various different places where I've placed the dish on top of the guitar, and Water has designed various different images that seem to be relevant. This is an interesting one over here. You can see the consistency of the eggs from putting an egg or 2 eggs in the ice. It's 2 here. But in this one, you can see here, there's the egg, there's the result. And this one, I got given the eggs by somebody I know who had free range chickens on their property and would give me eggs, but you could never tell if they were fertilized or not. And so you can't tell until you crack it open and you look at the yolk, and there's a little kind of a blood spot on the yolk. So with this one, I noticed there was something different about it, but when I cracked it open, I realized that this was actually a fertile egg. So Water seemed to know before I did. Lots of ways that Water responds to words. Now, I think this is really interesting. I've used different languages here. This is Pugio, which is Latin for dagger. This is Pyar in Hindi, which means love. You're getting the heart. And This one's kind of interesting because I used the word ego, which is a conceptual word. It's not that you can buy ego at the store. It's not something that you visualize for the word ego, but it designed big shoulders and neck, a little face, and a big balloon head, which
Oh,
really is
perfect.
artificial intelligence, really interesting. Conception. I mean, it looks like an egg with a sperm inside.
Look at that. Wow.
So consistency, where I'm using the word crop circle, and you can see there's clear image each time that where I'm doing this. And here I asked water if it knew my name, and it designed my initials, VA. This is how I write them. I never showed water that. That's just how it looked.
Oh my
Here,
gosh.
here I said, what was my name at birth? So I hadn't formed how I designed my initials at that point, so it's a separate VA. But this is a hydroglyph, these two circles touching, for conception. And this one circle means complete. Complete conception is actually what is written here. And this is where I asked the same question, do you know my name? And I fell asleep on the couch and it overfroze, but you can still see the VA. Now over here, I asked water if it knew my Indian names, because I was born with two Indian names, Veda and Karan is my middle name. And so I got a VK, and up here is what looks like Hindi.
Huh. Wow.
I'd love anybody actually reads Hindi. If that means anything to you, it would be great to know. Over here, I was asking I often don't have a specific intention with water these days because I've been doing this for so long. I'm more interested in what water wants to show me. So sometimes I will just freeze water with no intention. But before I froze the water over here, my cat Luna was just constantly wanting to go in or out. She couldn't make her mind up. I said, are you in or are you out? Are you in or are you out? And I got in the eyes. Over here I asked water, who are you? Now, if you make it out, this is an I, A, M. So it wrote, I am. And this is from playing the song Fly Me to the Moon. FLY. Now, over here, this was from somebody else who learnt my technique, but had also overfrozen it. She asked a very poignant personal question. Should I stay or should I go? And she fell asleep. And when she came to the freezer, her answer was there.
This one blew me away when I saw it online.
Really
It's like,
incredible.
wow.
It blew everyone away. I mean, including me. People think they get used to this, but I really don't. And here where I spoke the word Yeshua prior to
Wow.
freezing, and I got this really amazing vessel, like a cup of kinds. But I did notice there was something that stood out to me that was a little bit unusual up here, which I always go for things that look a little different. And so I zoomed in on it and looked at this. So then I basically put that on social media and I got over 1,000 people respond because I said, does this look like any language or anything to you? And everybody sent me this, basically. It is Hebrew for Yeshua. I mean, that one really, really blew me away. And
Wow.
this kind of chalice or cup of
Oh
kind.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's stunning.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning.
Oh, sorry, going the wrong way. This is some work of other people just to show it's not just me. There's all kinds of reasons why there's nail clippers there. My friend John is able to freeze outside. He lives in Utah where it gets freezing, and his nail clippers were beside his petri dish, and he watched it form. A lot of this is done by children as well. It's just to show that it's not random, and that other people are seeing imagery too. This one is interesting. This lady drank some water, held her dish, sort of spilled or not spat, but poured the water from her mouth back into the dish.
Huh.
Why is it like this? Because she just had her tongue pierced.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Jesus. Oh my gosh. I was saying it could have been a tongue, but it was separated. There you go.
This is one of the most interesting things that water has taught me, and I can sort of go and get it to a part where we can get into some more interesting, well, not that none of this is interesting, but some that perhaps we'll all find interesting on a really deep esoteric level, perhaps. But I think this is a really important one. It shows that water reads potentials. And by molecular count, as I've mentioned, we're 99% water. So water is always reading our potential. And I would say always reading our best potential, our highest potential. So here we have the sunflower seed, and here we have the result. Water has designed the outcome of the seed. Now, it surprised me when I learned that even dried up old seeds still have approximately 10% of water inside of them. So the next one shows the same thing with a flax seed. It designed the pod, the fruit of the flax, which is also where the seeds come from. And here, the same thing with an apple seed. It designed the apple. This was the apple I used. And this is interesting because I let that melt. I refroze it a day later. And then I refroze this 3 days later, which shows how it holds information. But when I put a pistachio shell with no nut in it, it only designed the shell.
Huh.
So I do want to quickly show what a hydroglyph looks like, because I think hydroglyphs give us a window into a language of water that we might have never imagined was possible. So I was doing lots of genres of music to show my son that water liked to pick up.
I'm just going to pause there and hop over to the end of our conversation here.
Maybe we can just chat for a second.
That's perfect.
Because the implications of everything that you've shown today are so huge. And it is something that I've found, I mean, when I have watched and listened to you in other interviews, I've become so excited because of how it completely aligns with what I've been doing as well. And finding this consciousness of water and how it has the ability to inform us all the time, and how we can interact with it, and in communication we work with our own water in our bodies, work with I wish we had more time, because one of the things you said in a previous interview was that water won't always cooperate with you. You need to be in a certain state to be able to do these experiences. And that is so helpful for all of us to know, and why it's so important to keep ourselves in a state where we can do these experiments, or even just to keep our own psyches and our own bodies in a positive, receptive situation. So I just, the fact that water is prescient, it knew you were going to chip your fingernail, right? It reads the potential. It knows that a seed is going to become this magnificent pattern, this incredible geometry, and so much more. And I just want to I think we could talk for hours. Really, we could. But there was something that I heard Dr. Emoto say in an interview once, and it was a conclusion that I was already on the brink of going there myself. He didn't ever write it. He stopped just shy of writing, that water might be what we, to use another word, use God or source or whatever, that water could be that great unifying principle that we've been staring at in the face and using without consciousness for forever. Maybe not back in previous days when they recognized it as living waters, but the potential here for water to be really divine is, I just think it's right there. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say that, I think that water is a divine truth, and that there is so much indicators now to me to suggest that divinity flows through water. in every single way, in every manifestation. And that ultimately we are what we've been looking for. And when we look in a puddle, we see what we've been looking for. And we also see that perhaps from seeing this work, maybe water sees us. Water sees us in a way that we, if I wish we could see ourselves, because there is no judgment in that mirror.
So beautifully said, so beautifully said. And I hope that you and I can have a chat someday where we don't have time boundaries, because we're so on the same page. And I thank you so much for what you're going around the world talking about, showing on your social media and on your website, because I think it is one of the keys to how we're going to be able to live better as we go forward. So thank you.
Okay. All right, so that's the gist of that. And Patrick, why don't you come on and we'll take it from here. And so Patrick, as I mentioned, is a dear friend from really a long, long time. And he had his own deep dive into water, and it has been with him and changed him as it has changed me, but it has changed him in his own particular way and brought him to a beautiful place. So Patrick, why don't you share about yourself?
Thanks. Hope, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be a part of this conversation, wonderful to be immersed in a dialogue about water consciousness, and to see those photos. Veda Austin's work is tremendous, and just so thankful as Dr. Emoto has passed the torch and moved on to another plane, that Veda's here to document things for us. And I feel a little bit like the sunflower seed, and my journey's been a little bit different. I'm a researcher, but I research what makes life better. And I had a career change, and as I moved into the new career, I wanted to sell water filters, and it was just hard. Like I've been successful at selling everything I've ever sold in my life, and water filters just wouldn't move for me. And then I found these structured water devices, and I don't know if you know, but you were definitely one of the first one or two that I ever sold. And, to share with everybody what that looked like is, I called Hope up and I was like, I've found this thing. It does this process with water. I don't understand how it works. I can't explain it to you. Since you have this history with dowsing and a really intimate knowledge of your own higher guidance, could you just ask your higher guidance if you're supposed to own one of these things? And I'll send it to you and give you a really low price and a money back guarantee for as long as you need it. And so the guidance that was necessary to start that journey is something I needed to rely on something outside of myself for. And so now, if we go a dozen years later, I've been through a journey of awakening, walking the path, or I guess gliding the river with water, that has shown me that for me, water is a resonance carrying tool that carries the resonance of the divine. So I don't exactly call it God, but I can't really separate it from God either. And what I've noticed is that there's types of water that are really impactful on life. And well, all water is really impactful on life. And it's really a question of whether that water is carrying more chaos or more harmony. And what determines that is the spin at the center of the water molecule. So there's this concept in our world that we can have dead water, like people talk about reverse osmosis being dead. And I would suggest that we can't have dead water. There's no such thing as dead water, but we can have lifeless water, just the way I, as a water sack, can hop on the couch and watch TV all day and just be depleted. And an example of doing that we do here on this earth is Las Vegas, Nevada, right? The water there goes through casinos and hotels and back out to Lake Mead, and it's going through concrete tubes all the time, and it doesn't interact with the earth. And I had a business conference that showed up regularly in Henderson, Nevada for a long time. And I would go, and staying hydrated there was just miserable. I found that I needed to structure the water multiple times and filter it multiple times. And then still, I would just be so eager to get home. And so the quality of the water is determined by the interaction with the earth and the liveliness of it. And so I live on Maui now, and one of the things that I've discovered is there's a very sacred valley called the Iao Valley. And I've noticed that if I go there and go swim in the water, I cannot go there in a bad mood and come home in a bad mood. Like it's transformative every single time. And so I've had the privilege of being in my own journey, but I'm also the CEO of a company that sells devices that cause water to spin infinitely fast. And I'm a very hands-on CEO. So I end up on the phone with a lot of people around the world talking about water and how it impacts their lives. And what I've discovered is that when you take water spinning infinitely fast, which is caused by a vortex, and patterned with sacred geometry, which is the language of creation, you end up with people who become alive. They get filled and immersed themselves in living water. And when they're immersed in living water, the interaction that they have with life is with their real self. So one of the things that I've started saying with people as 5G has proliferated is that you're structuring your water no matter what. Everybody is structuring their water. The question is whether you're making a conscious choice about it or an unconscious choice about it. So the unconscious choice, the default, is radiation, EMF, electromagnetic frequencies that are bombarding us all the time. And the conscious choice is there's a million of them. You know, Veda is doing it in 55,000 different ways with all of her different photographs. So you can pray over your water. You can go walk on the beach. You can go to findaspring.com and source water, living water directly from the earth for free in many, many locations. Or you can get a structured water device. But all of those bring water to life. And really that's what it's about. And so when we think about humanity uprising, you know, I think the path through that is through living water in our beings. You know, God has given us the solution. So yeah, let me pause there and make some.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And you know, this dovetails, you know, with the infinity wave and with Veda's work, because the quality of the water and the consciousness that went into creating a device to spin the water is all a part of it. You know, the care, the thought, the engineering, the materials, all of that carefulness affects the water, because I've already seen it demonstrated that water has memory, that water is aware of what's being done for it. And so when we, you know, and there are lots of structured devices out there, so, you know, we're not selling anything here, but it is true, based on, we can study it, we can measure it, that water that comes out of either a mountain spring, a clean river, or a structured device has a higher energy component, right? You can measure that. You have measured that.
Yeah, and it's also easy to feel it. You know, the number one thing that people experience with structured water that is structured to a certain level, right? Every water is structured. You know, industry is kind of funny because we try to make ourselves seem special, and we create a vernacular that makes it look like we're the best at something. So there's this little niche called structured water. And I would suggest that that's just an industry term. And the real truth is that all water is structured. There's no water that's not structured. The question is, how is it structured? Is it structured chaotically or harmonically? And so the easiest way to tell that it's structured harmonically is that it feels soft. People say it feels softer or wetter. And that's the best way to know.
And you know, I remember when I got that first device from you, that I wanted to drink more water when I had it. It tasted better, and my body seemed to go, "Oh, that's good. Can we have some more, please?" And,
Yeah.
you know, so that's another indicator that, you know, we're typically we're not as well hydrated as we should be. And one of the things that I learned through Patrick is that when you soften the water, it makes it easier for your cells to take it in. The body doesn't have to work so hard to absorb those molecules.
Yeah, one of my interesting inquiries as I was learning and developing my body of knowledge around this industry is that I would listen to people order water, and what they most often say is, "Oh, I'll have just water." There's this way that we treat it like it's nothing.
Right.
And you know, if we listen to Dr. Zach Bush, who has you know a lot of experience working with tens of thousands of patients, you know what he says is two things. The first is that 100% of us are dehydrated. Everybody's dehydrated, and given all the electronics these days, which is a dehydrating event, just living in a modern home is a dehydrating event. There might be a very, very small number of people who are hydrated, but it's small. And then that the way that a human body, the way that our biology meets the energy of the universe is through the water molecule. And so if you want to plug into energy and be like hydrated is the simple physical level version of the conversation, but it's actually plugged into all that you are, then the water molecule is where you're going to get that. And it's not just any water molecule. I would suggest you want to make sure that that water molecule is spinning infinitely fast. And that's more natural and less man-made, more of going out and pulling it from a spring and less of being in a modern environment. So it's great that we can turn on our tap and pull water out of it. But if that water has been going through long straight pipes and filled with chemicals, and it doesn't have chance to frolic and play in a ceramic egg or in a crystal water bottle or in something before you consume it, it's not going to feel soft.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I love what you just said about if we want to, can you say it again about if we want to meet the divine, we do it through water, through the water molecule. Is that what you said? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, the way Zach Bush said it is all the energy in the universe. Like where this biology sac meets all the energy of the universe is through the water molecule. And it's a living water molecule, right? Like, I think it's so funny that there's a plastic water bottle that's got the label smart water on it. Like that's just funny. It's a joke on humanity. It's like there's nothing smart about that water because that water is as dilapidated and tired as it can be. And what our body really wants is living water. Everybody's had the experience of going near the ocean at some point or going near a waterfall. And we're all happy when we do that. And we're happy because there are negative ions in the air and we're getting the benefit of that. So when water is really structured well, like the Aqua Energizer is the structured water device that we have, and it's been certified to actually produce that fourth phase of water that Veda was talking about, the H3O2. And what that means is it has a negative ion available to give. It has life force energy available to give to us. And you can get that other places too, right? Like primarily from nature or inside your fruits and vegetables. You know, a cucumber right out of an organic garden is a great place to get that negative charge. And it's that negative charge that is making all the difference.
That's fascinating. I want to just sort of pull this back into the where physical water and the idea of water that, for instance, in the infinity wave, sort of merged together. So you can imagine when this idea, this metaphor of a figure eight of flowing water, it's a metaphor, it's a visual that we can use to tap into this flow of energy, right? That this universal flow of energy. And because we know that, look, we use our imagination all the time. Everything in the room I'm in was created from an imagination. You know, it just, our imaginations have tremendous power. So what the infinity wave has taught me is that if we use our imaginations in this watery flow, not only in our own bodies, but especially to communicate, and this goes back to Veda's notion, and I think truth, that water is always communing with itself. So when I imagine a figure eight of flowing water between your heart and my heart, now we have this very high level of love and compassion running in the water. And just the idea of that, it means that the water in you and the water in me is being met and mixed in this idea of love and compassion. And if the water in you is actually more harmonized and the water in me is more harmonized, then that interaction is going to be that much more potent, more beautiful, more harmonizing. The same is true as if the water in you is already potent and harmonized and mine isn't. Running this infinity wave between us is going to sort of correct mine. It's going to lift mine up so that we're at an equal level. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, and actually, it's what I would suggest, this space between the energetics of water and the energetics of physical water is the place to explore for transforming consciousness for life as a whole. So as soon as you mentioned this little subtopic and started talking, I felt an energy field just feel our connection in our space. And as you well know, but everybody else wouldn't, a dozen years ago I had no awareness of energy fields like that. So this is that seed that water saw in me, and it pulled me into the structured water industry. And then it had me grow into this flower where I'm a lot more sensitive to energy fields and continuing to develop that all the time. So one of the things that I look at is that the forces that suppress in this world feel ubiquitous at times, and like they just have so much power over us. And yet there's this heart that we have, this undeniable spirit that we have, and this tool that we have, which is water. And when we take that heart and our capacity to envision a new world, and we meet the energetics of what you're talking about, we share the infinity wave and a heart-to-heart connection through the energetics of water, and then physical water that is more lively, I think that's where the miracle is going to unfold.
Mm-hmm.
I think that so when I look up in the sky and I see chemtrails being spread across the place that I live, I have a dream that I can actually do something about that. And the something is that I can talk about living water to the point that that pilot starts to immerse themselves in living water. And when they start interacting with the energetics you're speaking of and with the physical water that I'm speaking of, they will get a more true blueprint of themselves. And I bet that true blueprint says, I'm not going to take this order and fly this plane anymore. Like there's going to be nobody to fly this plane, because the shift in the heart of human beings with water will shift the consciousness so that we stop participating in a world that doesn't make sense, and we reclaim our natural order and live a much more fulfilling existence.
Oh man, Patrick, that's so beautiful. And that's something that every one of us can do. We don't have to feel helpless when we see all of that or any other thing that we don't feel great about. I'm going to invite Jim. Do you want to come back in and ask some questions or join the combo?
With pleasure. Veda was certainly extraordinary. I had no idea of the versatility of water and the clairvoyance of water and the prescience of water.
Yes, yes.
It's quite remarkable. My goodness. I'm not quite sure where to begin, but let me just jump in, maybe starting with you first, Patrick. explain again the difference between, say, filtered water and structured water. Because I think most of us have water filters in the house, and that seems to eliminate most of the toxins and so forth. But just make a cleaner differentiation for structured water and filtered water.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. You know, a dozen years ago, the way I figured out things like that is I called Hope and I was like, I have no idea. Can we do a channeling session and figure out what I'm supposed to learn in this area? I really just didn't have any knowledge. And I had back in 2012, there weren't many structured water devices. Like everybody who was in the industry was manufacturing them, and everybody who was selling them had a different business. So say, for example, an acupuncturist would be selling a structured water device. And I had a career as a financial advisor. There's no tie between being a financial advisor and structured water devices. I let the whole old career go, and I went all the way in and became, as far as I know, the first structured water device distributor in the world. And I didn't care what technology I sold. Like I wasn't loyal to, I made this. I was loyal to what would move the needle in your life so that your life got better from whatever I discovered. So through dowsing sessions and different things like that, and the people who came to me, like water sent just the right people to have me become this expression of the flower that I am today. And the distinctions that came, because most of the dialogue in our culture is about water filters. So if I pick up the phone in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, the person says, hey, does your device remove fluoride? Because that's the cultural conversation and that's the chemistry conversation. And so I learned a distinction. There's chemistry and there's physics. And so all of our dialogue culturally about water is a chemistry-based removal conversation. And I sat with that philosophically and I was like, if I'm one with everything, how can I remove anything from anything? It just doesn't make sense. And that's what opened up clearly understanding that physics is the process of letting water spin itself with sacred geometry and vortexing to aliven itself. And in the multidimensional universe, there are no toxins. The toxins are a man-made expression. It's a concentration of things done by man. So chemistry-based filters are a man-made expression responding to a man-made problem. But if we drop all that, then we can get to the physics and transform the energy. So a lot of that will spark another question for people. So I'll just go ahead and finish with that, which is, do you need a filter? And do you need a structuring device? And what I would say on that is everybody makes a choice about structuring. You can get a harmonic device or you can get structured by 5G. And the question is, once you make the choice for structuring, whether you get a device or not, you're making a choice. Then you get the alive water, and it's until you're filled with alive water, how can you even begin to evaluate whether you need a filter or not? And so I would suggest a filter is only necessary for taste, smell, or confidence. So I don't actually need to remove toxins from water because they don't resonate with me. Like fluoride's supposed to suppress the third eye and coat the pineal gland. And yet I've had this extraordinary change in my pineal gland and third eye while drinking fluoridated water. That's not the issue. The issue is, does it taste good? Does it smell good? And am I confident in it? And in many instances in today's world, I can do that just with a structuring device. And sometimes a filter is necessary too. So I hope that helps clarify that issue.
Yes, thank you. That I like the distinction between chemistry and physics, that the one is an elimination of certain chemical toxins created by us, and the other one is actually working on the vibrancy of the water itself. And the theory is that to animate the water to the spin takes care of the toxins.
That's it.
That would make sense. That would actually make sense. That would actually make sense. And that's what your company specializes in, is the different devices that enable you to structure water.
Yeah, well, we've actually been coming full circle here, where in a dozen years, we've been through a lot of different companies and been through their devices, and we've had trials and tribulations along the way. And I actually have a surprise for Hope to release right now, which is we've been making devices by hand over the last couple of years, and our devices are the only ones that have been certified in the world to produce H3O2. We know in a laboratory they are transformative. They create this fourth phase of water. And over the last 6 months, we've been having to scale from being handmade to having more of a process so that we can meet demand. And in that, we convened a team of 6 sensitives who have various measuring techniques that they've been using for decades to measure the effect of every little change in the geometry of our devices. And the device we make now, it's called the, oh, I can't do that. I thought that might happen. Maybe back here. It's called the Aqua Energizer. And this logo I learned along the way. Our graphic designer one day, let me stop my my blurring and my background here.
Oops.
Oh, bear with me 1 second. Sorry about that. This looks like it's going to call for reading glasses.
I know
So
the feeling.
there we go. Okay, so this is, you see the logo of the Aqua Energizer.
Yeah.
And our designer just channeled it one day. Like one day it came through, and then I'm going to put my image back on, but I want you to see these hand-drawn 8s on here, because this is the surprise for Hope. So we've been working with this team of people, and what we discovered was putting 8s on the devices helped the devices meet the increased electromagnetic frequencies.
Oh.
And so we've been messing with that for a couple of months, and we finally determined, right now there's 35 8s taped onto this device in a very particular configuration, but we figured out how to make it 1. And so the Aqua Energizer is going through one more little adaptation, and we're adding an infinity wave to the outside of the device.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask by the way, put your website in the chat, Patrick, so people can find out more and potentially buy your products, because our community is all about self-care and self-health and self-healing and all kinds of good things. That's what Humanity Rising is all about. So I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you. Now, let me ask you the next question in my mind. There you go. He just put his website up, so you can avail yourselves of that. So as I understand what Veda was saying, and various other people, is that the power, like if you hold your hands around a glass of water and just express intent and gratitude, etc., for 10 or 20 seconds, you animate the water. And you do it just because you're taking the time after you pour yourself a glass of water to just focus on it. What's the difference between what you do through a structured water device and someone who reverentially holds the glass in their hands and creates the intent of gratitude and resonance? What's the difference in those two methodologies?
Sure. Well, I'd say that's a great question. And, in one of my interviews 7 or 8 years ago, somebody heard me talking and he called me up and he said, "I can teach you how to structure water without your device." And I was like, I'm in. Like, what does that look like? And he said, "Well, you come to my home in New Hampshire, plan to spend one night, we'll spend 2 days together and I'll show you." And I'm like, okay. So to me, that was an opportunity to go from what I would describe you're saying is prayer. right? Focused intent prayer around water,
Yeah.
and take it to a really deep level. So I went and I spent 2 days with him, and I was convinced that I had just been shown how to structure water without my device. I was really excited. And so I said, let's convene a workshop. I will gather 10 people, and you can come and teach. And I want to see how this impacts people's lives. So we spent a weekend together, 10 of us, learning how to not just pray, but actually spend many hours focusing on increasing the softness of water such that we could feel that the water was different. And at the end of the workshop, I asked everybody, I was like, do you feel like you learned how to structure water without the device? And they all said yes. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And then I waited a week and I called them all again. I was like, so have you been structuring your water this week? And every one of them said no. I was like, what happened? And they said, it's hard. It's a lot of work. Like we're busy. We're going here. We're going there. We're thinking about this. We're doing that. We're lowering our vibration because we got triggered by this sound, or we're having this experience when this door slammed, or something came on that was actually really stressful. And we are in this modern world that's just pulling us apart. And so if what somebody's up to is praying for hours a day and wants to really hone their practice, I think we have the capability as humans right now to structure the water to a level of harmony that would bring us the type of properties that we're talking about. And I hope to live there, but I'm not going to spend half my day doing it. And so
the amount of intention, and Hope, you should comment on this.
I want to chime in here a little bit.
Yeah, so that the amount of intent, the amount of intention over time to get to what you really want to do with the water takes more time than most people have in their calendar.
I think so. I can do Qigong for an hour today, and I have a Qigong master who's in my life, and he is just I hope you know Zane, like he's just a bubbling ball of joyful chi. Like I can't get anything out of Zane other than joyful chi. Like he just is that. But he's been through so much for decades, and he does spend his life doing and teaching people Qigong. So it's not
What
that
about these like cup holders where you put a glass of water on top of a crop circle or a mandala? My understanding is that also animates the water.
I agree. Hope we didn't make very much room for you there. Sorry.
Go ahead, Hope. You jump in.
That
This is so fascinating. Thank you both.
I know. It's amazing. Excuse me. The easy button to structuring your water is to simply do a little figure 8 in it. Put an infinity wave in your bathtub. Draw it, just put your finger in your glass of water.
Just once or multiple times?
I just do it a couple of times. I mean, I use the structuring water device that Patrick makes for everything. But if you're out at a restaurant or you go in a hot tub, although I'll tell you, every time I do this, I'm like, why did I do this? Because I'll get into a hot tub and I'll be the only one there, and I run a big figure 8 in it. And the next thing I know, everybody's coming out of the woodwork getting in the hot tub. So, but you can send an infinity wave to a body of water like the ocean behind Patrick and his image there. You can begin to communicate with water through this infinity wave. What goes out comes back. So when you're reaching out to the ocean or to a lake or to a river, it'll immediately come back to you. As Veda has proven, water communes with itself. So that's an easy way to do it.
Yeah, and I can throw a little bit more in here. So, in really researching this industry, I found there's a couple of essential items and a couple of deal breakers. So a deal breaker for me is something that you plug in. I do not want something that's part of the electromagnetic frequencies to be part of this creation.
Oh, good point.
It's a deal breaker. So like there's this machine that looks like a blender that vortexes water. I would never. Like sound sensitivity, electromagnetic sensitivity. Wouldn't even want those in my house, right? And then, so the more man-made it is, the more I don't want it. And then the more it is of the essence of creation, the more I do want it. And so for me, the essence of creation at the most powerful level comes through sacred geometry and a vortex.
Yes.
So not
Yes.
to say you have to have those to structure water, but that's the most powerful I found. So I have little plates and things. I got a piece of shungite that's like a pound sitting right here in front of me between my computer and me. That is structuring water, right? And that is helping with the radiation. There are lots of over the years, as I've sold the devices, people have handed me what they structured with before. So I've gotten little cups with sacred geometry and different things, little plates, and they're good. Like all of us that are in this conversation about what is the energy of water, how do I want to harmonize it, what aligns with my values and beliefs, we're all in the same conversation. It's all good. And so you just choose where you are on the spectrum of that.
Yeah, gotcha. Gotcha. That's a very important point, Patrick. All roads lead to Rome, but some do take longer than others.
For sure. Yeah, well said.
This is so fascinating. By the way, I just want to bring in Kim Kerrigan. She says that as a long distance swimmer, do you think it's possible that water can save lives, basically? She distinctly remembers that water, while she was swimming, the water telling her specifically what actions to take to save herself in rather turbulent tidal conditions. Why not?
Why
I mean,
not?
if water does everything else that we're hearing about today, I am sure, given how conscious Kim Kerrigan is, that the waves would guide her to safety
Yes.
because it's
yes.
intelligent, right?
Mhm.
That's the basic assertion.
And she already has a beautiful relationship with water. You know, if she's a long distance swimmer in the ocean and she's been doing that for quite a long time, then that relationship has built over time. And so what she's emanating every time she gets in the water is the love of the medium that she's swimming in. And the water recognizes that. And water communicate. I was in a very wonky place a number of years ago, displaced. I was supposed to stay one place and then I ended up in another. Anyway, it's a long story, but I ended up walking this long beach in Florida. And I was, asking profound questions. This was halfway through my deep dive with water. And I noticed that every time I asked a question of a very profound nature, a giant wave would come and wash over my feet. And after about 3 or 4 of these, I realized, oh, the ocean is answering the questions for me. And other than that, it was way, way down, and then every now and then when I asked a big question, would come up. So I think, yes, Kim, I would go along those lines of thinking.
I have a couple things to include here. One, I'm not monitoring the chat, but I can see little pop-ups coming, and I get the sense that there's people talking about different products, and I have sold most of the products or experimented with most of the products in the structured water industry. And so people are welcome to go to thewellnessenterprise.com and use our contact form or just email support@thewellnessenterprise.com, because I don't feel like this is the forum for that discussion. But as you're raising those products up, I know a lot about them, and I'm happy to help with anybody who's trying to get clear on those. And then back to the question, one of my favorite things to do is to body surf. And I've thought about what happens and why it makes me so joyful. And I've watched the salmon go upstream. When a salmon jumps up through a waterfall, what it's doing is it's finding a vortex. And so it gets pulled up the waterfall. It's not fighting through all that force. It's just going into the lane that's going up. And so there's a moment in body surfing when I catch the wave where I really get a good one. And it feels to me like I'm moving infinitely fast. And the pitter patter on my body is really, really intense. And I notice that just makes me really joyful. And so getting around moving water is phenomenal for us. And the miracles, like salmon swimming all the way back to where they were born, that is a miracle. And so I really think that water is here to carry us to our deepest dreams and visions. And if you can focus on it and bring your intent, you can have the experience you're looking for with it.
Yeah, beautifully put. And I know as a swimmer myself, and unlike Kim, I don't have access to an ocean or a lake, but I do swim in a pool. That when you come out of a swimming pool, having, done 20, 30 laps, and you just feel so good.
Oh, good.
It's an exquisite feeling for your body. I used to be a runner, and the feeling that when you swim as opposed to when you run is just completely different universes of feeling and well-being. It's really quite extraordinary, really quite extraordinary. Well, I just have a final question to both of you. And that is, I'd love to have both of you, maybe you first, Patrick, and then you, Hope, talk about the spiritual growth that you've undergone as a result of your relationship with water. Because ultimately, if I'm understanding everything you're saying, that's the end of the process here, is that we may drink the water, structured or animated water, for mundane reasons, health reasons, but in the end, we're establishing an intelligible communication with an intelligence and presence that can refine our spiritual being, commensurate with the depth of the relationship itself. So I'd just love to have both of you, out of your deep experience with water, just to talk about that.
Jim, that's the best question. That's my favorite. My book is called Flow, and the subtitle is something like From Pure and Safe Water. So I spoke to what people want, right? They want chemistry-based filters from pure and safe water to higher states of consciousness. Because water, God showed me, that's what I'm here as a vessel to talk about. And so one of the things I learned through hand analysis is that I have a relatively clear life purpose, which is around emotional authenticity. I'm sorry, I said life purpose, I meant life lesson. So opening up emotion always makes life open for me. Things move. And Hope's known me a really long time. And I've been an emotional guy. I mean, I was an angry train wreck a lot. I played football and rugby because I liked knocking people down. Like I had a lot of anger about life. And it's really this career change in 2010 and the really falling into the channeling sessions with Hope and letting her be a mentor and guide to me in life that opened up this softer energy. I went to one of her workshops, and we did this thing that Hope I'll summarize as swinging in the earth, where we got the feeling of the infinity wave while being swung. Jim, it looked like I got you just by sharing it like that on my bouncy chair. And you start from getting a little bit nicer feeling, like Jim, you and I just shared right there. And then you just keep asking into it. And I remember the years of going to bed at night and being like, okay, water, like, I get that you're everywhere and you're everything, and I don't get this. So I'm just going to lay this question on you, and I'm going to go to sleep because I need to sleep peacefully to get up tomorrow and do your work. So could you clarify this for me, please? And when I get up in the morning, just download the answer, like just let it be there. And I wake up every time clear. I went through experiences where I lived right by the ocean, and I was cranky. I was an angry guy, and I'd go down to the edge of the water and be like, how am I going to figure this out? And then I learned long toning from Jonathan Goldman and how to use vowel sounds to balance my chakras. And I would go down to the edge of the water angry, and I would balance my chakras, and I would get flooded with inspired conscious ideas. And I would run up to the house and start writing them down. And then as the years went by, I was like, hey, wait a minute. there's no end of that flow. I don't have to run. Like, I'll get what I get and everything's okay. And I'm 54 now, and I'm moving through my life lesson. Like, I'm not at the beginning anymore. And I'm getting really soft. And I mean, I have to be honest with you. I've never been interested in kindness. It just hasn't been a thing. Like, I've been driven and I've been forceful, and I've been getting lessons in kindness. Like, I can't believe the way I speak to and honor my dog now, let alone the people around me. I just become so soft. I'm almost unrecognizable. One of the things that's always there now is
Beautiful.
one breath and one cup of water, and I'm centered, and the infinite information of water, the whole universe, is available to me. So for me, it's been a full-on transformation of who I know myself to be. And I couldn't be more thankful that water chose me to have this journey so that I could go through all these expansions.
Wow. What a testimonial. You've really embodied, Patrick, the experience of water. I mean, that's an extraordinary testimonial. You know, you're the poster child.
For whatever reason,
beautiful.
For whatever reason, this is the path that I was supposed to live.
Yeah.
And you know, if I stay in the flow with water, like, I can get dehydrated and remember those old emotions pretty fast. Like, it doesn't take long. But if I stay on it and I stay hydrated, I live in a flow now that's really steady, and it guides me like a you know, water going back to the ocean, coming down a stream. Like, it just takes me through all the twists and turns.
By the way, do you subscribe to the eight ounce glasses of water a day?
Well, that's a whole nother story. I would say that hydration is how you drink, eat, and move. And so drinking's good, but you can get really wonderful structured water from water-rich vegetables. So part of what's caused me to be a different version of myself is that I'm not eating processed, dried out foods. They don't have any energetic value to me. They don't resonate. Right? So sure, it's a good start, but you want to look at the quality of the water and the quality of the food. And also, movement causes distribution of structured water in the fascia. So if you're loading up, like, I did a fruit cleanse once, and in the fruit cleanse, I learned that I only needed about half as much water as I normally do. So if you're loading up with water-rich foods, you don't need as much water.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. That's amazing. This is really amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Hope, why don't you make your comment and close us out?
Okay, I don't know how to follow that. That's pretty.
Yeah, that was beautiful,
amazing.
Patrick. That was truly beautiful.
Yeah, and this is why I was very excited to introduce Patrick to you and to the listeners. Well, I think I've already described a bit how water has led me, has opened me. I learned from the Infinity Wave downloads, you know, all the practices and the things that came in, that it can actually, and it has for me, it can actually increase our sensitivity, our intuition to the realms above and the realms below, meaning the earth and the heavens, for lack of a better word, which I've been taught through the wave are equally spiritual realms, and in the perfect balance of the above and below. The earth would occupy the bottom part and the heavens the middle part, the upper part, and we are in that where the cross happens in the figure eight. This is us with access to information here and access to information there, and it's all held in water because water is the communication tool. So what's happened since the wave came in for me in 2010, and Patrick is witness to this, is a massive expansion of my interaction, my ability to interact with the beings beyond and the beings below, specifically water itself, Gaia herself, and all the elements. And I never, ever in a million years thought that I would be that person, but I am that person now. Water is, and Patrick's book title is perfect, because if what the main lesson from the infinity wave is, if we can stay in love and compassion, we are automatically in a state of flow. That's what it is. And we don't have to sit and try hard, you know, to get ourselves into this place of love and compassion, because we all know in a busy life most of us don't have the time to do that. But if we can use this gift from this loving universe of this infinity wave, it will quickly shift us into a higher state of love and compassion without a lot of labor. And the more we remember it, the more we use it, the more it starts to structure our beings. That's how I see it. That's how I experience it. That's what people have reflected back to me. The more that we structure our beings in love and compassion, the more the water in us can communicate with the water with others. And it starts to be a literal ripple effect going out and out and out until we reach that 100th monkey moment when we're all vibrating in love and compassion. So that's what it's taught me. That's what I'm doing my best to live and communicate to others.
Thank you, Hope. And thank you, Patrick. That's a beautiful, beautiful closing remarks from both of you on a session that has been really mesmerizing because, you know, we're all so intimately intertwined with water. We're drinking it, we're showering in it, we're bathing in it, we're swimming in it, we're composed of it, we see it all around us, and we've treated it completely disrespectfully. So most fundamentally, I'm grateful to you for establishing this pathway of respect and love for this element that comprises most of who and what we are.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the point you're making, Hope, which I think is seminal, you know, all of us in our science books know that water is most of what we are. But the two of you and Veda, I would add, are deepening that awareness. It's not only what we are, it's largely who we are. And it has the what of what we are can lead us to the most refined who we are. That's the power of water.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Well, I'm going to go on your website, Patrick, and I'm going to buy one of your structured water and I hope that I have both of you back to grace us with the deeper insights into this extraordinary domain, because it's a profound importance in a world of ubiquitous pollution.
Mm-hmm.
It's like purifying us from the inside out.
Mm.
And that's a beautiful thing. And you've made that available to us. So thank you very, very much. So that'll bring us to a close, everyone. If you want to join Hope and Patrick in the after chat, you're welcome to. You'll see the link in the chat box. And then you also received it in your Zoom invite reminder for today. So that'll bring us to a close. Have a good weekend. And then we're going to see each other again on Monday, 22nd of April, which is Earth Day, with Linda Tucker, who will be speaking to us on humanity rising in the Leo and Aquarian age. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
And thanks.
Thank you.
Terrific
Thank you.
session. Terrific.